Hello, everyone. How is everyone's week? I'm just making sure everything is going up as it is supposed to. Okay, I know notifications aren't going up very well for these lives, hence why there is always a moment for everyone to trickle in. Um, there is a few things I wanted to talk about as we begin the week. I think a lot of important topics have come up talking about the ongoing nature of First Nations people's rights, a memorial for Army veterans that are in the LGBTIQA community, and so much more. So join me for a fun night of talking about relevant issues. Okay, so the very first moment we have is I was blessed with finding this. Each state has, well, I don't know, some sort of economical thing going on. And when I seen this, I thought, how come this hasn't come up before? And why haven't I seen it? So, if you haven't seen this, I think you should. There is going to be state elections coming up. Do not test me on dates. I do not know when. But I do know that 2023 is going to be an interesting year for state elections. Now, when we talk about the economy, each of the states has their own little stuff going on. So it's important to note that Dean Andrews is still being attacked heavily by a lot of media, and they're relentless about doing it. So let's have a look at how he's handled everything in the middle of the pandemic and everything else. So if we have a look at this data, this is what I've found interesting, is that they lead the whole country on the economy. This is it. They've got everything that you need. It ranks first on both retail spending and relative unemployment. Now, this is despite knowing that Victoria did have the most intermittent lockdowns. Of course, if we have a look at Western Australia, it as a state did the real biggest lockdown in terms of who could come in and out of the state. And their economy also thrives. So it said that lockdowns work for the economy. So that myth that was going around that you just don't spend as much during that time just didn't add up. The ACT ranked first on equipment, investment, and housing finance. An overview of Tasmania ranked second on equipment and investment. Queensland is ranked first on relative population growth. Now, this is going to be a big deal because if you're here in Queensland, you're also going to know that there is a housing shortage. So, if we've got all these people, where are you going to put them? This is going to be a fundamental problem. So we're going to have to build quicker, faster. Okay. Western Australia ranks first on relative economic growth. Now, this comes off the back of uh, Western Australia having massive deficits from the Liberal government that was in a few years ago. Uh, they squandered the mining boom essentially, and they've been working hard to get a bigger slice of the GST redistribution as a result. Colin Barnett wasn't exactly fantastic with money, that's to say the least. And the massive hole that he left in the economy there is nothing short of a shit show. But that's for another moment. So South Australia is ranked first on dwelling starts and construction work. Then you got New South Wales. It's ranked third on relative unemployment. Now you have to take a look at that as a whole. New South Wales is not performing the way it should. Yet it should have performed a hell of a lot better, considering it had minimal lockdown, minimal interruption of everyday life. So I think that this is basically an overview. Hashtag Dan was right. I really, really do want to stress that Dan Andrews is still getting the shittest show you can for media coverage. But let's be clear about this. It shouldn't have to have been this awful. If we're fair to him and say, hey, why is this happening? This is happening purely because there is a media that really dislikes Dan Andrews, which is why I'm showing New South Wales is not empowering itself like it should, with all the rhetoric of New South Wales is great, they're the golden child, all that stuff that Scott Morrison was saying hasn't came to fruition. But do you know what did? And this is why I begun with that. Victoria is, despite all the dog earing of whatever it does, and that needs to be important. The Northern Territory is ranked second on relative economic growth. See, now, what I'm seeing here as a result of this isn't to brag that one states are doing better than other states. I'm here to show you that Dan was right and that the lockdowns worked. And essentially, he held the economy and the keeping the pandemic in a better position. Now, there was a media that bullied this situation out, and now we're suffering a lot because of that. This pandemic is still going. Do not think for a moment that this is over. No, sorry, it's not over. I get my fourth jab on Monday, so that is happening. Just so you know, I take it very seriously. So, in saying that, I want to make it fundamentally clear. We are not done with trying to keep Dan Andrews in a better position, because the media shouldn't be the arbiter of our opinion of Dan Andrews. It should be relative to the work that he does. And I'm sick of seeing this whole everyday news cycle of, oh, look at what Dan Andrews did today. Look, the man is running a state. He's not doing anything big and evil and deceptive. And my goodness, if the media wants to run that rhetoric, prove it. Don't just have your thing where you're like bringing up a tweet from 2011 or whatever it is that you're trying to pull, or whatever Rachel Baxdale feud that that she wants to bring up for any moment of her choosing. The Dan Andrews thing needs to stop. This was essentially why PR guy did his thing. I think that that's really funny, and it was so strange to see that PR guy had to do this, and that had nothing to do with the Victorian government. It just happened to be a guy that was like, hey, this isn't right, and I don't support this rhetoric at all that the main media is running. That is what needed to happen. It sliced through that rhetoric, and he's still doing a damn good job at it. but it shouldn't be up to us to carry that mantle. The media should be unbiased and look at Dan Andrews and then say, what? This is actually what is happening. Rather than distorting the truth. That's my issue with this. And they're doing the same thing to Albo, only it's not effective. They can't clobber Albo. They've been trying to, and it really doesn't work. It doesn't really work with Dan Andrews either. But because Albo hasn't been in that long and they can't really tie anything to him, like, when the flood happened in New South Wales, and Albo was overseas, the very first thing he did was send relief to him. Let's send out help, let's do what we needed to do. And then he came back and made sure everything was good. So that kind of deadened the message from the media that they couldn't control the narrative. So I think that if we keep pushing against this overall narrative that the media has on these political figures, stop trying to push conservatives on us, basically. That's what I really, really want to tell the media. Stop trying to push conservatives. We are not interested in it. Your weird values are not welcome here. And stop it, because overwhelmingly it's been found that they're not very popular. So, next story I want to talk about, the voice for the First Nations people. Now, there will be a referendum as to how this gets heard in the Parliament. Now, this will go the same way that the same-sex marriage plebiscite did. You will all be issued with a ballot and you will be made to vote on yes or no. The First Nations voice should be heard in Parliament. This will be historic, no matter which way it slices. I'm hoping it's a resounding yes for the First Nations voice, but it'll be historic either way, because this is the first time that our nation has taken a absolute stance in saying we've ignored these communities for too long, and they are the owners while we are just caretakers of this land. They do have a genuine connection to land, and it's something that we've never, ever made right with those communities. So, one thing that I love to see this week, and I know that these pictures that he does are for the media and that sort of thing. But the thing is that he goes to these communities and consults these people. I understand that there is a PR team behind what Albo is doing right now, and the way that he's talking about it is very positive. For the first time, we're actually hearing a real moment where someone is saying, let's do this, let's make it a thing, and having the political fortitude to stick it in and make sure that the media hears this is time, we've waited too long. I, for one, think Albo is doing exactly what he said he would do, and this is going to be a sign of that. But it wasn't just that surprised me, that he went there. There's this as well. Okay, where did I see it? Here we go. So, Patrick Dodson, it's an honour to attend this year's Gama Festival on the traditional lands of the Yonaju people. I tried to say that the best I could, with the PM and colleagues. With this celebration of their culture, the people share their wisdom and hopes for the future. It is up to us to listen and act. And that's part of it too, is that he's listening to the people. And that he's taking it to the people for a vote. He's going to these communities and he's helping them feel heard. It's so sad that it takes white guy running a country to make sure that the bigger voices are heard here. But we can't miss the fact that this week was also marred with a stunt from Pauline Hanson, where at a smoking ceremony, she walked out in protest. It also didn't help that Jacinta Price backed that. Now, as disgraceful as all that is, and there's no mincing my words with Pauline Hanson, you low life son of a. Pauline Hanson just needs to not exist in any political form ever. Every time I see Pauline Hanson, every time it comes up the same way. Her stunt, along with Jacinta Price backing that stunt, set us back a monumental amount in making sure that this got the right message from the jump. From the jump, any talk about this referendum or whatever else, it turned into Pauline Hanson walks out of a smoking ceremony for the Welcome to Country and Jacinta Price backed it. Oh, I could not express my frustration any more than that. And I think that that's the thing, isn't it? The frustration was so incredibly real and raw that it was difficult not to be frustrated at how it all sounded and was. But then there's this. As we're talking about, hold on, Aboriginals and their voices, Labor drops coalition bid to overturn High Court ruling that Indigenous Australians can't be aliens. In other words, you can't deport them. The fact that we were even doing this is fundamentally the most screwed up thing that the LNP ever did. And I'm overjoyed that Labor was like, what are you doing? That's insane. Well, of course, Mark Dreyfus didn't say it like that, but essentially what he's saying is that's not workable. And it should never have been done. The Albanese government has abandoned a controversial High Court case that sought to restore the Commonwealth's power to deport Aboriginal non-citizens. How this ever came about, I won't know. The decision by the Attorney General, Mark Dreyfus, guarantees that a dozen Aboriginal non-citizens at risk of deportation will be able to stay in Australia and ends the former coalition government's attempt to overturn the landmark precedent of Love versus Toms. In February 2020, the High Court ruled that Aboriginal people cannot be aliens, putting them beyond the reach of the Immigration Minister's power to detain non-citizens. How did we get to this insane part? I just, these stunts that they pull, no one seemed shocked anymore or outraged that they just did it. And I remember reporting on this when it first happened, and it got a lot of traction and a lot of retweets and a lot of talking. But then it died, and then we were like, why did that suddenly die off? I think that's the super sad part. The super sad part about this is that it did die off. But in October 2021, Guardian Australia revealed that Morrison government was attempting to use a case of Shane Montgomery, a New Zealand citizen culturally adopted as Aboriginal, to overturn that precedent. In November last year, the federal court ordered Montgomery to be released from the Immigration Detention Centre, sparking a Commonwealth appeal to the High Court, which was heard in April. The court reserved its decision at that time, which would have meant that if they heard it underneath the current underneath that government of the day, there is a good chance that this would have set in a whole different precedent. When you're talking law and this sort of stuff, you need to be super careful about the framing of this. This is why it was sort of frozen in that moment, realizing that an election was coming up and that this would have been, even if we don't like how political these things are, particularly immigration, which it shouldn't be political at all, but somehow it is because there is an immigration minister that dictates how this stuff proceeds. And yes, all eyes were on Mr. Dutton for this stupidity. But Thursday's Commonwealth appellants, including the immigration minister, filed a notice to discontinue with the High Court action. Now, this will also bring up, as we go through the show, the talk about Richard Boyle and his court appearance, which will be coming up soon too. That will also have a fundamental issue. Here's the thing. The LNP left all these time bombs for Labor to just very quickly gather up and find out as much as they humanly could. And here's what the LNP did to make sure they were on the back foot. They were excluding them on talks of where these cases sat. That's just a fact. They weren't being open and honest about where all these cases were sitting. A spokesman for Dreyfus delegate for the Immigration Minister, Andrew Giles, has revoked the cancellation of Montgomery's visa. As a consequence of that decision, the Commonwealth has discontinued its appeal in the High Court. The previous government brought the appeal in Montgomery to the High Court in order to seek to overturn the court's previous decision in Love v. Toms. And Toms has been the law of the land for more than 2 years now, and the Albanese government will not seek to overturn it. Artie Cherry, the counsel at Russell Kennedy Lawyers, which acted for Montgomery, said her client had lost years of his life fighting to remain with his children and his family, including his parents and his community. We are incredibly relieved that this ordeal is over. The law firm said in a statement, importantly, the High Court's landmark decision of Love and Toms will remain undisturbed. So Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people cannot be deported from their own country. Dude, we got to a point where we're deporting people from their own country. Why? Because the government of the day is horrible. That government of the day was horrible. And it just set so many terrible precedents. And that brings me to how poorly it's still trying to behave. It's this, I don't know if you've seen it this week as Parliament was reconvening. All of the Labor delegates were all wearing their masks, the Prime Minister included, the Speaker and everyone else were all masked up and protecting one another, keeping a 6 feet distance and many other COVID precautions. If you sat on the opposite side of the bench, not so much. But Peter Dutton forgot where his seat was and was sitting on the wrong side of the House. Peter Dutton was later told to remove himself. It's not widely spoken about that this actually happened because, of course, Peter Dutton doesn't know even where he's supposed to sit. How can he ever be an opposition leader of anything? Ugh, it's just ridiculous. Okay. And we have one of these moments. Now, listen to this little moment. Okay, I need to find it. Hold on. Why is that so? Here we go. Found it. This is such a weird.
Speaker, I'll take the interjection from the. Now, Mr. Speaker, I'll take the.
Angus Taylor gets pulled up by the Deputy Speaker for referring to her as Mr. Speaker and then immediately calls her Mr. Speaker again 4 times. It's incredible. Well jobbed, Angus Taylor. Well done. See, you make your own jokes at these kinds of stupid things that you do. And you're so heated, you don't even know who you're talking to.
Interjection from the member opposite because.
Okay.
Sorry.
I have waited.
Deputy Speaker.
I would
I
loathe to
apologise.
interrupt you, but you have called me Mr. Speaker on at least a dozen occasions. My title is Deputy Speaker. I don't need a Mr., a Mrs., a Madam. It's just Deputy Speaker.
I'll go
Thank
with
you.
Deputy Speaker.
But you would have been a great
Thank
speaker.
you. Thank you, Deputy Speaker. You would have been a very good speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, meanwhile, those opposite get rid of the ABCC. They get rid of the ABCC. And we know how important that is to productivity. We know that is helping to reduce the cost of construction in this country, Mr. Speaker. The Treasurer gave us a painting today, Mr. Speaker. He was a forecaster. He was a forecaster, not a leader. He was a commentator, not a treasurer. We need a plan, Mr. Speaker. That's what Australians want now.
Seriously, Shadow Treasurer, you're just going to have to dump the Mr. Speaker when I'm in the chair, okay?
That's such an odd thing to do. And when I was looking at it, I was like, this is so beyond the pale. This is just what they do. They're horrible, they're vindictive, they don't have any plans, they just sort of go with it. And they don't even attempt to correct themselves. They just continue on with their weird narrative. And this is how the Conservatives operate. And I'd like to say that, this is normal, but it isn't. And we don't want to go normalising this kind of behaviour. Here's another thing I don't want to normalise. So this week, Melbourne had a way of shining light on Rainbow Light Plan on Remembrance Day, citing threats and abuse. It was put up for the LGBTIQA community, and it shouldn't need to be said, but I'm going to say it anyway. You idiots, what were you thinking? This is not, if you're doing it on Christian values, I can assure you there is nothing Christian about your stupidity. And threats and abuse is not Christian. Melbourne's Shrine of Remembrance has cancelled its plan to illuminate in the site rainbow colours, citing sustained abuse and threats directed at staff. The rainbow plan for Sunday night was set to coincide with the opening of the new exhibition inside the shrine called Defending with Pride LGBTQ plus Service. It is an exhibition that charts the history of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer people in Australia's armed forces. Now, if you remember why this is so important, and if you don't know, I'm going to explain it very briefly. Australia has a horrendous history of treatment of these communities, and nothing short of beyond horrendous if you were in the armed services. There was this don't ask, don't tell policy, and it was once illegal to be gay, and you could be in serious trouble for being gay. Yeah, so for all of you people who thought that it was incredibly bright to say something like, I don't want this shoved in my face, remember this part. These people just wanted a damn light. After everything they endured, you can't give them a light, a rainbow light? Christ. At what point do you look like idiots trying to pretend that you are some big, bold person saving Christianity? Which part of the Bible does it say, hey, let's just be horrible and abusive about a rainbow light? Oh, wait. Because I can't find anywhere where this is acceptable. I'm sure most of you can't. Okay, the exhibition and last post service are going ahead from Sunday. However, the Shrine of Remembrance Chief Dean Lee confirmed that the rainbow lighting would not. Over several days, the staff have received and have been subject to sustained abuse, in some cases threats in a statement. God, how godly of you to do that. You unimaginable monsters. The reason I say unimaginable is because if I think about the terrible thing that you did, I then have to live in that moment of how you treated this. We have seen something of what the LGBTIQ plus community experienced. Some of the social media activity suggested there could be a protest against the light taking place on Sunday afternoon. The shrine was at the violent scenes of September when anti-lockdown protesters were involved in a tense standoff with police. And if you notice that there is a huge white supremacy movement involved in that too. So, bigots, just do your thing. Just leave everyone else alone. What is this, like some Avi Yemeni loving fest for insanity? What is wrong with these people? It was a light, a rainbow light that was supposed to commemorate that we no longer prosecute them for being gay. For heaven's sake, it wasn't difficult. To be abusive and threatening over that, dude, you've got some problems. And they're not ones that any medication can fix. Okay, continuing on. In the interest of minimizing harm, we have given the matter careful consideration and sought the guidance of the Shrine's partners and friends, including veterans and associates and representatives of the LGBTIQ veteran community. In other words, they serve their country with pride. The minimum you could give them was a light. But sure, you let the hateful bigot win. The stories we seek to tell are the stories we seek to tell, the service we seek to honour, these will be told. The brave lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender and diverse queer people in the armed forces will be honoured. The move to light up the shrine attracted some backlash from conservative commentators who expressed concern that the politicization of the site of the veterans is also opposed to the move. Are you kidding me? The politicization. You made it illegal. No, it was already political by you terrible bigots. Oh my God, there was no coming back from this. I cannot fathom why this would have been a no-go zone. Why are we pandering to such a small group of little incels who will never get laid? It is phenomenally frustrating. And that's all they are. They're like January 6th rioters here. They're just terrible people. And we have to keep putting up with their stupid faces in ours. Oh, it's a lie, for heaven's sake. Mr. Lee pointed to the recent elimination of the building to remember assassinated former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe when defending the decision during the week. It has also been lit up in honour of the Queen's Diamond Jubilee to remember the police officers that were killed in 2020 in the Eastern Freeway crash tragedy. If you remember, that was 4 police. In a break incident that failed. It was just horrible. The exhibition will be still going ahead, but not with what it was supposed to have. And I don't think that there is an anger, the term I can give you. These communities have endured so much. And, you know, you've got them 7 rugby Manly players that are acting like little babies with their stupid conservative values. They can have alcohol plastered on their shirts. They can have gambling on their shirts. They can have their team logo on that shirt. Hell, they can even have people right beside them that are very non-Christian acting with cocaine parties, which we've known now for a long time that is quite common in these little weird football circles. But put a rainbow line on it? No. No, we'll just opt out. That's where their line stops. Not on the booze, not on the gambling, but on gay people. That's what they should hate, right? The amount of visceral horribleness that you need to reach to that point. And that's where they've dropped their little line. It was like the mask mandate. Their feelings were so hurt that they needed to be out in the street and spread a deadly disease. Their stupidity is so big on stuff like this. And there's no changing their value system. What we need to do is ignore them as a whole and continue to do what we know is right. That should not have been cancelled. They should have marched through it and then just gone, hate doesn't win. Hate should never win. Oh, so, yeah, there's that. So there is, I'm just going to try and find it because I did have issues pulling it up before. Okay. Yeah. So what happened here was robo-debt is really going to be abolished. The whole idea of it is gone. You can no longer do robo-debt letters. And if the Conservatives if the LNP were put back into place, they absolutely were looking at a way to reinvent this whole saga of robo-debt. Now, I don't know how many of you in my audience that did receive a robo-debt letter, and did go through that initial moment in this costed 2,000 lives. The robo-debt saga cost lives. So as we listen to how Bill Shorten addresses this, take in the full weight of 2,000 lives that were lost to something so totally preventable and something that if the LNP got back in would have definitely restarted.
But Labor has promised to introduce a Royal Commission because there is much that we do not know. I work with my colleagues, the Attorney-General and the Minister for Social Services. The terms of reference will likely go to who was responsible for the design, development and establishment of the scheme. What questions were ever asked about its legality? What risks were identified? Why were the volume of complaints and the administrative appeal decisions ignored for 4.5 years? What were the full costs of this scheme? This Royal Commission will start most likely in the last quarter of this year. Hopefully it'll be concluded in the first 6 months of next year. We're finalising the personnel, but let us be very clear to the people of Australia. If we don't learn from the mistakes which the previous government has never owned up to, then we can make it again. It's the very least that we owe to nearly 500,000 of our fellow Australians who are illegally attacked by their own government.
That is where we're at. We are in the moment of our lifetime where we need to learn from past mistakes and never, ever let the Conservatives gain power like this again. But on that spirited note of the robo-debt saga, I want to point out that Labor isn't done just with that. There was a cashless welfare card where they were like, look, this is a terrible idea. And it was largely junked as a whole outfit. When I looked at this, I originally thought, how horrendous can this thing be? So picture that you have like a budget and a certain amount can only be accessed a day or out of your pay. You can't go and buy something on Facebook, which is very common, like a lounge or whatever. I personally have done stuff like this, so I know how very real it is. This card was supposed to prevent gambling, and it did no such thing. All it did was create new problems, bigger problems. The Albanese government has introduced legislation to abolish the cashless welfare card, and it seeks to move its promises made before the election. It has also flagged its intention to introduce legislation for 10 days of the annual leave for those trying to escape domestic violence. So this does two things. And so if you're not aware of how Labor operates, they largely operate to help those who have difficulty helping themselves. That should be the striving pattern of any government. But not Conservatives. They will just tell you something to hate and then follow them through that light and then help their rich buddies get richer. That's essentially the ethos of the LNP. The ALP, they're union backed. They got a lot of positive narratives about helping the poor, the sick, and the elderly. So if you have a look what ALP have already taken on, they're taking on help for the aged care crisis. They're looking at domestic violence help, the healthy welfare card. They want that gone. They've also seek a royal commission into the robo-debt saga. So when we talk about legacies and what's left behind, it seems like I don't understand how there can be a media that's opposed to any of this. These are things that are fundamentally what we've needed for so long, and yet the media is like, not a big deal. I don't know. It's so strange. Both pieces of legislation were 2022 election promises made by Labor. The cashless welfare card management scheme is currently being used in more than 17,000 people across Australia. In a statement, Social Service Minister Amanda Rishworth said that the participants would transition off the scheme with an option to volunteer for continuing into it. So it'll turn into a volunteer-only participation movement. But I mean, I don't think anyone's going to stay in it. According to the statement, the government will engage with those on the card and make them aware of the transition. It'll ensure Family Responsibility Commission can continue to support their community members in the Cape York region by re-establishing income management. Now, you got to remember, Forrest Twiggy made a bucket load of money out of this. There was a lot of money made. But they're not done there. So what will end up happening is this will also bring to light where we are on with the healthy welfare card. We should never have gotten to this point. All these horrible, insidious things that Labor have had to cut off, I think that we're overall going to need a long time to recover from this. But I want to talk to you about something else. Labor is going out of its way to make sure that we are following medical advice. Now they're doing as they say they would. They can't make anyone, they can't make the states do it. And there was a lot of political force on the states to stop following that advice. But this is what federal Labor is saying.
Mr. Speaker, I only regret that I can't follow that lovely team of dedicated clinical legends around the country getting my fourth dose at every facility to drive up awareness and vaccination rates. Such is my determination to leave no stone unturned in getting aged care through winter. But alas, I am advised that that would be against the medical advice, and we on this side of the House actually follow the medical advice. Where are your masks? Mr. Speaker, I only regret that I can't follow that.
That's the part that I want to leave you with thinking, that they were not following the medical advice as it should have been done. I think that that's going to be an important problem for them in the preceding timeline. There will be history look at all of this stuff. There's going to be like this ravenous, insane moment where they're like, you're going to be like, you listen to those idiots? What for? You listen to idiots that didn't want a mask, wear a piece of cloth on their face and didn't want to stay home? You thought they were the winning party here? No. There's going to be definitely some kicking some butts over this. And they're going to look stupider as time revisits all of it. But I want to thank everyone for a wonderful, wonderful evening. I want to say I'm very thankful to be able to do these shows with all of your support. Any time that I read one of your comments in support of my content and sharing of that content is always helpful. I want to thank everyone who's taken that moment. This will be it for me tonight. Thank you. Have a safe evening, and I will see you next week, same time, same place. Have fun. Bye.